It was Friday, February 14th. I spent another evening at my favorite restaurant, Defenders. Years ago, this place had a bad reputation as the old owner couldn't or wouldn't take care of the customers. Everything changed one night when an elderly couple was harassed by three disgusting drunken idiots, whom I called the Three Stooges. The couple was attacked by these idiots while the owner and his staff sat and enjoyed their evening show. The owner, who was in his late 20s, was too immature to run the place. I had seen enough and intervened to help the couple avoid further trouble. In less than a minute, the three dunces were dragged out of the restaurant while customers applauded. The couple threatened the owner with legal action. After a heated discussion about running the restaurant, it was decided that it would be sold to a couple. Well, sort of. It was a little after 8 in the evening when the group began to set up. They were good musicians, but not ones you would bet on to become famous. Locals flocked to the restaurant every weekend, and they did decent business during the week. Since it was Valentine's Day, there were more couples in the place than usual. I have been going to this restaurant for many years and knew all the staff. I did come for the food, but I stayed and tipped them well for their service. I didn't drink much, averaging a couple of drinks per visit. However, many patrons drank like fish and walked like spaghetti when they left. And there I was, alone on yet another Valentine's Day. Since my wife, Brandy, died, I decided not to plan any romantic dates on this day. Anyway, I was watching people while playing a quiz on one of the big screens when I noticed one of the patrons was having difficulty with another customer. The woman was alone, kept to herself, and looked at the door as if she was waiting for someone. Several minutes passed before she ordered from the menu. She seemed uncomfortable, tense, ate small bites, and looked up every time the door opened. She finished dinner alone. She dabbed the corners of her lips with a paper napkin before nodding slightly and smiling politely at the waitress. I couldn't help but look at her. The sparkle in her eyes, the blush on her cheeks, her beauty was mesmerizing. I could only think what kind of idiot would leave this woman. One of the drunken men tried to flirt with the woman, but she refused his drunken attempts. He didn't understand that no meant no. I've seen this countless times over the years and did what I would do for any damsel in distress. I jumped up from my desk and crossed about 20 feet in 07 seconds. The security guard was only a couple of seconds behind me. Marvin put one arm around his shoulder, and I did the same as we walked him outside, and Margie called a taxi for him. Marvin thanked me for a job well done and offered me the job again. I laughed and told him, "You won't be able to afford me," like I always said. Margie immediately thanked me and said that dinner was at her expense, as she had done many times before, with a wink and a nod. Margie, her husband Hank, and I became great friends after our first encounter with the Three Stooges. When the current owner of the restaurant named the price to sell the bar, I said, "Deal." Margie and Hank looked at me like I was crazy. We set a date to hand over the property in a week. I invited Margie and Hank to my house to discuss the details. I explained to them that I saw potential in this business. Hank was a former military man with experience feeding thousands of soldiers. Margie worked as a waitress in her youth and then moved into a management position 10 years ago. From the way she talked to the owner about his management style, I knew she was in management. Margie and Hank shared their concerns about buying a restaurant. The main problem was that it would drain them financially, and they were afraid to put all their eggs in one basket. In their mid-50s, they had worked hard to plan for their retirement and were on their way to her achievement. I eased their fears by telling them that I could be a silent partner and they could keep most of their savings. I just needed to know that they were ready to run the place. With Hank and Margie investing 20% of their savings, I knew they could do it. With the financial part out of the way, I began to talk about my various experiences with the restaurant over the many years that I visited the jungle, as I called it. I told them I was tired of the way the restaurant was being run and wanted to create a safe place for people to have a good time. At 6 a.m., the Defenders were born. As I walked back to my desk, I noticed a woman in tears. I made a detour to her desk to make sure she was okay. "Are you hurt, young lady?" I asked. And I'm fine, she sobbed. If you're okay, why are you crying? I continued. No one has ever protected me like this, she said, sobbing. Glad to help, madam, I replied in my best Southern accent. This made her laugh, and she wiped away her tears. My name is Jones, Mike Jones, I said, trying to sound like James Bond. This brought a smile to her face. I haven't seen this woman smile since she walked in. You should smile more often, young lady. I would invite you to dinner if I knew it would light up the room. Damn, you're so cheesy. Is that all you can do? She said in a playful tone. Hell no, I'm getting even more cheesy as the night goes on, I replied instantly. Now she was really laughing. I'm Mindy Johnson. Thanks for helping me with this guy. I know genuine gratitude when I hear it. You're welcome. It happens here sometimes on the weekends. Marvin knows he can count on me, and the owner has given me permission to help keep things in order. Would you like to join me for a drink? A tiger like you shouldn't be alone in this jungle, I said, trying to sound as cheesy as possible. This brought another smile. I was starting to enjoy my night. Of course I would. I was supposed to meet a guy from that stupid dating site, and surprise, surprise, he didn't show up. A queen such as you will never find a worthy contender for such things, madam, I said, bowing my head. You really do get cheesier as the night goes on, don't you? In all seriousness, I told her that I enjoyed being cheesy. It works for you, not for many, but you get it done. I declare you king of the cheese. Now it was my turn to laugh. I walked her to my desk and pulled out her chair. She looked at me as if I were an alien. She sat down, but I couldn't tell if she liked my old-fashioned manners. What will you drink? I asked. Merlot, she replied. Before I could raise my hand to signal our waiter, Margie was already at our table. Please allow me to apologize, madam. We try our best to make our guests happy. Margie continued, Flash Gordon here is our super-secret superhero. I noticed, Mindy said with a smile. Are you sure you're okay? Margie asked again. Yeah, I'm good now, enjoying my Friday night for the first time in a long time. Well, your dinner is at our expense. Would you like something to drink? Margie asked. Yes, bartender, I replied. The lady would like a glass of your best Merlot, and I'll take it. Margie interrupted me. Yes, Flash, you'll take your 2 fingers. 3 or more if I'm lucky, I said with maximum sexual innuendo. Margie rolled her eyes and told Mindy she'd be right back with our drinks. Mindy looked at me curiously and said, 3 or more fingers, right? What can I say? I have good fingers, or so I was told, I replied. Don't get ahead of yourself, Mr. Gordon, Mindy retorted. I excused myself and went to the toilet. Margie was already bringing our drinks. As I passed her, I said, Don't tell her any lies about me. Margie laughed and continued on her way to our table. Margie, what can you say about this guy? Mindy asked. Oh dear, I need to sit down for a long time if you want to hear the whole book. Margie sat in my seat and told Mindy some of my past, lifestyle, romantic relationships and portrayed me as a saint. I took my time, knowing the stories she might be telling Mindy. Even though I am who I am, I really didn't want to hear stories about how I caught a bullet for Marga when some idiot tried to rob the place, and also stories about maintaining order in a restaurant. And I especially didn't want to hear about how I brought a woman into my house because she was homeless. This story has a sad ending, but I really tried to help. When I returned to my desk, Margie loudly declared what a creep I was and walked away. I think I've gone from Flash Gordon to Alec Baldwin, I muttered. Mindy laughed until she dropped. You can't help but joke, right? I wasn't sure if she was serious, so I replied, I am who I am, in my best Popeye voice. You're full of surprises, Mr. Gordon, Mindy said with some seriousness. If serious, I answered, and Mindy nodded. I'm just a person who likes to enjoy life, and sometimes I do things to make sure I can. What about the homeless woman? Mindy asked with some uncertainty. How could I enjoy life knowing that this woman needs help, that I have the means to help, but I would refuse to help, I answered honestly. We sat for about an hour and talked a lot. We discussed everything from religion to politics and money, the big three topics that people really don't want to talk about these days. I learned that Mindy and I had similar views on the first two topics, but she seemed indifferent to money. I, on the other hand, saw money as a way to enjoy life, even if it meant helping people I didn't know. The band played the usual songs they usually perform. Like I said, they were good, but they would never be superstars. They slowed down and started playing. You're just too good to be true. I can't take my eyes off you. You'd be like heaven to touch. I want to hold you so much. I jumped out of my seat like I'd been shot in the ass and proclaimed, "They're playing our song." Mindy started laughing so hard, I thought she was going to wet herself. I extended my hand to her and said, "May I ask you to dance, madam?" Her expression changed from pure joy to possibly shock. "Are you serious?" Mindy asked. "Jones, Mike Jones, or did I not introduce myself? Who is this guy, serious? Was he your date for the evening?" I answered. "You're my date, Jones, Mike Jones," she said, reaching out her hand to mine. When our hands touched, I felt like I had been shocked. "Holy heavens, Mindy, you really know how to get a guy's attention." "You, sir, have completely captured my attention," she replied in a flirtatious tone. I took her to the dance floor and we started dancing. I told her I thought she was going to pee herself earlier. She leaned closer, put her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I don't wear panties." "If you didn't think you had my full attention before, I'm sure you know now that you do," I whispered back. When the song ended, Mindy realized my dilemma and turned around, holding my arms around her. She led us back to our table where I pulled out a chair for her, and she sat down. I sat down on the chair next to her to sit closer. Margie brought us another circle without words. However, she gave me a look that said she approved. Her opinion meant a lot to me. Margie is a very good judge of character, and we seem to be able to recognize good people when we meet them. Mindy said, "Are you trying to get me drunk so you can take advantage of me?" "Yes, madam, I'm trying," I answered with a feigned challenge. "Mr. Gordon, do you want to know a secret?" "God forbid," I replied. "Loose lips ruin ships." "It's a good thing I don't have loose lips, huh?" Mindy replied, accumulating sexual innuendos. "You can sink my battleship at any time," I replied. Mindy looked me straight in the eye with more desire and determination than any woman I've ever seen and said, "Any time?" "I say what I mean and I mean what I say, dear," I answered honestly. "So what's the secret?" I asked her, letting her know that I was really listening to her. Mindy told me that she wanted nothing more than to make love to me in front of all these people. I grabbed her hand and led her to the exit. With a wave from Margie, we walked out the door. I whispered in her ear, "Do you want to come to my house?" Her response was a simple nod. With less than a mile to go home, it seemed like an eternity. I wanted this woman. I studied her body from head to toe. She was slim, about 160 cm tall, and weighed about 54 kg. Her measurements, according to my estimates, were 91, 61, 91 with a bust size of C. Her hair was light brown with highlights and went down to the middle of her back. Her skin was smooth and tanned, and I noticed a small heart-shaped scar on her ribs. Her face was highlighted with minimal makeup, which made her green eyes sparkle. Mindy was one of the most beautiful women I've seen in a long time. She reminded me of my wife from the past. I was madly infatuated with her. I didn't want her to wake up and see this strange guy staring at her, so I carefully covered her with the blanket. This was my chance to return to the garage. I returned to the house. I'm not in bad shape for being 40, but I could definitely use a regular workout partner. I am exactly 183 cm tall and weigh 93 kg. I still practice martial arts to stay fit and ready for any challenge in life, especially in the Defenders. I sat down in my chair and thought about the feelings that had awakened in me. I haven't experienced anything like this in years. I've dated a lot of women and never had a problem getting a date. I was married at 23 years old. With a degree in commercial real estate and commercial finance, I was on my way to starting a family. I had slept with no more than 4 women before this. When Brandy came into my life on February 14th, I knew she was the one. Cupid struck me with his arrow the same day a woman I met online dumped me. I was waiting for my date and ended up eating alone. A group of women at another table were getting drunk and started making lewd comments towards me. I felt extremely uncomfortable when Brandy sat down at my table. She was also abandoned. Only an idiot would leave this beautiful woman alone on Valentine's Day. Brandy sat next to me and explained our situation as she saw it. She noticed the women and heard their comments. Brandy waited an hour for her date and decided he wasn't going to show up. She watched me for almost an hour before she came to save me from a flock of seagulls, as she aptly called them. One of the drunk women got angry that my beer ended up on her. The woman stood up and started yelling at me, grabbing a steak knife off the table. Brandy immediately intervened and told the woman she needed to put the knife down. Needless to say, I was hooked. Brandy and I became a couple. We were more than a couple, we were inseparable. It seemed as if the cosmos had united our souls to create one person. Brenda and I were on the same page. We shared the same views on life until almost 10 years ago, when an event occurred that changed my life forever. Even though Brenda looked amazing, we went our separate ways after that fateful day. Little did I know that Brandy had money, and a lot of it. I met her parents about a year before our wedding. They had a nice house, but from its appearance, no one would have said that they were rich. I couldn't help but notice that something was missing in their relationship, especially with her mother, Heather. I didn't see any communication between them other than the usual greetings and conversations. I felt cold with her on the rare occasions when we spoke. Her father, Jacob, was a little warmer, but not by much. Technically, the money belonged to her grandmother, Grace. She lived in a prestigious area, drove an expensive car, but always behaved pleasantly. No one would have ever guessed that she was worth $500 million, not that it would change my opinion of her. We had a wonderful conversation on our wedding day. Michael, I just want you to know that I was hoping Brandy would find someone to share her life with before I passed away. I'm so happy for you too. You remind me of my husband when he was young. I thanked her for her good wishes and added, I could only hope to be half the man your husband is, and I wish he were here. This brought tears to her eyes, and we hugged. As always, life moved forward. Grace died 5 years later. I comforted Brandy like any loving husband would. The family knew this day would come because a year earlier, during a routine examination, an inoperable brain tumor was discovered. Grace was a smart woman and planned her inheritance. Her lawyers made sure that her will was carried out exactly and every cent went where she wanted. You can't imagine how many relatives show up when serious money is on the line. What shocked me the most was who was left out when the will was read. From what I read, I could only imagine what Grace despised in her son, Jacob. Either way, Brandy received the bulk of the inheritance, with relatively small amounts given out to a few other family members as well as a few charities. Jacob got mostly family photos, with a special set saved for Brandy. I think Grace wanted to convey to her son that family should be treasured. Jacob never took the photos, so we kept them. Even after taxes and attorney fees, Brandy was left with more than $300 million. Brandy and I were getting ready to start a family. We never had to worry about money and could really focus on the things we enjoyed in life. We traveled a little, we traveled a lot, but mostly in the US because people with money are prime targets for kidnappers abroad. We were more inseparable than ever over the next 2 years. Brandy got pregnant while we were in Hawaii. We loved these islands and bought a modest but updated home right on the beach in Maui. At 16 weeks, Brandy began experiencing complications with her pregnancy. The doctor told us that there could be further complications, and there was a possibility that our unborn baby might not survive. He went on to explain that there could also be a danger to Brandy if we decided to go through with the pregnancy. He set her expected due date as February 14th. I thought it was a coincidence. Brandy and I didn't even discuss the possibility of getting rid of the pregnancy. Neither of us could or wanted to even think about it. We spent the next 14 weeks at home, as the doctor ordered. Brandy followed his instructions strictly. I took care of her every wish and looked after the house. It felt like we were running a small bed and breakfast with a number of people who would come, stay for a couple of days, and then leave. Most noticeably absent were her parents. After the reading of the will, her parents left the lawyer's office and never returned. That was the last time we saw them. After a long conversation with Brandy, I learned that her parents were trying to take steps to seize control of her grandmother's inheritance. Obviously, it was terrible, regardless of her condition. Greed makes people do bad things. Grace set up a trust fund for Jacob, which he and his wife had spent by the time Brandy was 3 years old. She supported them until Brandy went to college. Although Grace paid for college, housing, and a car, she did not let Brandy know about the trust fund at the time. Brandy loved her grandmother and called her at least every other day. She shared everything with Grace. Brandy didn't know how much she was worth and never thought about it. Brandy received a handwritten note from Grace at the will reading. It read, "My dear Brandy, if you are reading this, I am no more. I would love to see my beautiful great-grandchildren. I am so happy for you and Michael. You two hearts, pure as white snow. Michael is so similar to your grandpa, that's amazing. As you already understand, I left you most of my fortune. You will never be able to spend all the money, and I doubt that you and Michael will even try. However, if you value my advice, and I do, that is the case, please continue to use my lawyers for your estate planning. They are the best and will help you on your way through life. Never show off your money, always treat people with respect, and do what makes you happy. A wonderful man to grow old with. Take care of him like I took care of my grandfather, and he will take care of you. You have my love, respect, and now my money. I wish you a happy, healthy, and loving life. I love you with all my heart. Grandma Grace." Everything was going well until one day Brandy woke up. I thought she was just sleeping, like so many times before in recent months. Most days, she didn't get up until noon. It was a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I went to wake her up. It was time to take her vitamins, so I bought her a glass of water. When she didn't move, I couldn't breathe, time stopped, my whole world collapsed. I called 911 as soon as I came to my senses. Only a minute passed, but it seemed like hours. When the paramedics arrived, I was sitting on the steps with Brandy in my arms. She was pronounced dead at 2:14 p.m., and a part of me died that day. Brandy's parents contested her will. I wasn't particularly surprised, but the lies they spewed to get a piece of the inheritance were incredible and sad, to say the least. Brandy followed her grandmother's advice and used the same lawyers as Grace. God, they were good. The entire inheritance was left to me. Not only could we not spend the money, it kept growing. The lawyers presented in court a letter addressed to me from Brandy as evidence. When the judge read the letter, his eyes sparkled, and I thought he would cry. A look of anger appeared on his face with every word he read. The parents incurred legal costs and received nothing as they were severely scolded by the judge in the courtroom. It was disgusting to see how her parents tried to portray me as a controlling and abusive husband. I became a recluse for 3 months and decided that I needed to talk to a psychologist after I read the letter Brandy left me. After 2 years, I finally accepted my life. I was on edge, which went against everything I believe in. I've never been a coward, and Brandy would beat me to a pulp if she were here. I knew I needed help, and thank God I had the means to get it. Brandy had a handwritten note for me, just like her grandmother had for her. It took me 3 months to read it, but everyone grieves and heals differently. It was short, sweet, and full of love. It read, "Michael, my love, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. Life doesn't always work out the way we expect. If our baby survives, and I don't, I know you'll be a better father. If neither of us survives, just always remember that I loved you with all my heart, and I want you to love again. Michael, you are a very special person. Keep your heart as pure as white snow, my love. make you happy, respect others, and learn to love again. I wanted to tell you not to show off your money like Grandma told me. I know you will never do this, my love. Until we meet, Brands. As I sat in my chair, I replayed Brandy's letter over and over in my head. One tear fell from my eye as the words, "Learn to love again," were repeated over and over again. "I will," I whispered to no one in particular as I fell asleep. On Saturday morning, I was awakened by an amazing creature that I had put to bed. The sun hasn't risen yet. Mindy sat on my lap. What took me by surprise was this whisper in her ear. "Is your heart as pure as white snow?" "Always for you, my dear," I whispered back, knowing that my life would never be the same again. About went to the bathroom. When she came back, she put on one of my t-shirts. I told her it fit like a glove, although it almost reached her knees and hid her figure. I poured us some orange juice and Mindy wanted to talk, and she did talk. "Why didn't you come to my bed last night?" Mindy asked softly. I told her I can't sleep with people who snore, and she snored loudly. She thought I was serious and started apologizing. I started laughing, and she realized I was joking. I didn't mention the part about how I looked at her in her helpless state. I reproached her for ruining the paint on my car. She said it was all my fault, and I should take better care of my vehicle by always having a good coat of wax. It's interesting that she said that considering I've only heard it from one other woman, and that was Brandy. Something strange and exciting was happening in my mind. I told Mindy that what happened yesterday was special. She said that this had not happened for many years, 8 to be exact, since her husband died. My instincts about this woman were correct every step of the way. Something strange was happening, but I knew that this was my destiny. I continued to explain that I wasn't sure how she would feel waking up next to me, not knowing if I was being used in some way. This brought a smile to her face. Her smile truly lights up the room. Mindy told a story that I couldn't understand but accepted as true. Mindy and her husband were in a terrible accident. She went on to explain the only scar she had on her ribs. They were both declared dead. Mindy said she remembers seeing her bodies as she hovered over the accident and into the light. Mindy claimed that the warmth and love she felt was absolute bliss. She claimed that she was surrounded by her family, including her husband. No one spoke, but everyone nodded their heads no in unison. A woman appeared and took her away. The woman told Mindy that her time had not yet come. She remembers how the woman kissed her forehead. The woman then told Mindy that she needed to learn to love again because her heart was as pure as white snow. The woman touched her ribs and Mindy felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Immediately, she returned to her body while doctors recorded the time of death at 2:14 p.m. Doctors were baffled when they couldn't find anything wrong with her condition. Mindy had been dead for over 20 minutes. The only exception is the heart-shaped scar on her ribs, which was not there before the accident. Her story was not only believable, but also terrifying and comforting at the same time. My heart felt pain and love for my wife again, and I began to cry. Mindy held me in her arms, seeming to know how I felt. We sat quietly for a while. I asked Mindy to come watch something with me. We entered my office, and I turned on the light. Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. There was a photo of Brandy on the wall. One look at her, and Mindy couldn't speak. I saw her turn white and caught her as she fainted. I was wiping her forehead with a wet rag when she woke up. It was clear how the brain tried to understand it all. I smiled at her and said, "Welcome back, my love." Mindy smiled and hugged me, and we kissed. Now everything became clear to me. If she didn't recognize Brandy in the photo, I would have shown her the photo of Grace. One of these women was communicating with her. I just didn't know which one. I know she's not Brandy, but I'm damn sure there's a part of Brandy inside of her, and I'll never let it go. The signs were there all along. February 14th and 2:14 p.m. were significant changes in my life. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but some people will say that there are no coincidences. I picked Mindy up and carried her to our bed. As I lay down, I looked into her amazing eyes and said, "Happy Valentine's Day, Glad to meet you again. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.